And welcome back everyone. Round 2 of the European Chess Championship has just finished, at least for me, and I had the white pieces today against Alexandra Maltsevskaya from Poland. She's originally from Russia but has been representing Poland for I think 2 years now. She's actually exactly my age, also born in 2002, and has a rating of now 2370, 2380, but she was already, mostly she is over 2400, so she has the international master title, and apart from that I assume also the women grandmaster title. That's usually how it is. So she's of course a very strong player, and going into the game I kind of wanted to surprise her already with the first move by going e4, since it's something I haven't done as much recently. I mostly went for d4 and knight f3, so that was kind of the idea, and she wasn't fully surprised since I do play e4 also quite frequently, but she wasn't expecting it as much as I think she was the other moves basically. So she's kind of mostly a Sicilian player, so that's kind of also what I prepared for. She went c5, knight f3, e6, and for this game, or for this tournament to be exact, I prepared this line with g3, which is actually not bad at all. I didn't want to go into these theoretical fights in the open Sicilian. I think she plays the 4 knights, which tends to be very concrete and forcing and sharp, which I didn't want to go to. By the way, I didn't mention even, but I hope the lighting is okay. Please, everyone, let me know. I'm even using my phone light, like the phone torch, because simply there's almost no light in the room, but please let me know if I can improve something. I'll try my best. By the way, once we're at the topic of improving things, someone pointed out in the comments that I should add the time, which I try to do now. So hopefully you can see the time spent per move now, and that it works well now. Please, again, let me know if you have any tips how I could improve things. Please let me know. So I didn't want to go for the open Sicilian, so I went for g3. She went knight c6, bishop g2, and knight f6, which is one of the lines. Also d5 is possible, but in general white will get some sort of IQP position, for example. She also played bishop d6, she had some games, and knight d7, but in general white is a little bit better, knight c3, and then white usually takes here, goes a3 and b4, whoops, a3 and b4, and the pawn on d5 is always kind of like a long-term target. So this is slightly better for white, not the end of the world for black, but I would have been happy here. She went knight f6, now d3, d5, queen e2, bishop e7, and now this line I prepared, this move a4, which was played by Giri. I think he was one of the first ones to play this. And the idea is simply that white wants to stop the move b5. So I think it's actually quite an interesting idea. Maybe some of you could also find this useful for your own repertoire. So the idea of a4, as I said, is to stop b5, and in general in those structures black will always want to try to gain space on the queen side by going b5 and b4. One thing to point out why he cannot do it right away: if he goes b5 right away, then e takes d5 is very unpleasant for black, and now he cannot take back with the pawn, which usually he wants to do because the queen is pinning the pawn. So here he has to take with the knight, and I think now short castle followed by c4 is already pretty bad for black. So bishop e7 and now a4. Otherwise, if I go castle, then b5 is an option which black has. So went a4, and here she went b6, which I didn't remember checking, and here I kind of had to spend some time to try and figure things out, because what I checked, what is also kind of the main line I would say, is to castle first, and then after short castle here the move b6 is what I had, which is, by the way, probably not the best for black. The best is probably to take and go e5, going to some sort of King's Indian structure, but here white probably has the easier play. I think c3 was the move I intended, and then followed by knight a3, knight c4, perhaps also knight fd2 followed by f4 is one idea. So I think this is also quite nice to play for white. But what I was familiar with here, b6 for example, and now bishop f4 was the move I wanted to play. And then kind of again white is preparing, and then at some point he will go e5. That's kind of the idea here. And after bishop f4, now I remembered bishop a6, and then I go e5, knight d7, and here I think that c3 was the move. And then later on white will also go knight a3, knight c2, and just start attacking on the king side at some point. By the way, I didn't say that yet, but again, I'm fully without the engine, so take everything I'm saying here with without that many guarantees. While the opening stage I am still somewhat familiar with, but later on there could be some mistakes, so this is just my own analysis basically. But she started off by going b6, and now I went knight a3 because well, castle looks very logical, but now I was not sure about bishop a6. He's threatening to take on e4, or she's threatening to take on e4, when I cannot take back because of the pin. And now if I go e5, knight d7, then she hasn't castled yet, and she does have the extra option to go g5 at some point. For example, rook e1, g5, I wasn't entirely sure about this. Black threatens g4, and the pawn on e5 could become a target later on. So that's why I went knight a3 to have bishop a6 and now knight b5. This was kind of my idea here. Short castle, queen d7, a bit surprising to me, but also not clear what else she could do here. This knight on b5 is quite annoying. I was expecting bishop b7, which then after bishop f4, a6, knight a3 will bring us back to some of my analysis. By the way, I had some very nice ideas here, if I can just remember them. I think it was through the other move order. Let's just go there because I had some analysis. Again, I'm not entirely sure if I'll remember all of it, but I can try. So it was castle, and now the line b6. I analyzed bishop f4, if I'm not entirely wrong, bishop a6, e5, knight d7, and now I have to think if it was c3 or knight a3 first. Does knight a3 work? I think it was knight a3 here. And yeah, that's what I analyzed. I think it was knight a5, something like that. And now black is threatening c4. Let's say I go h4, then c4, d4, and at some point c3 was working, but it's not here. Yeah, not entirely sure. I think the whole line was with bishop e7, which I want to go to. So bishop e7, let's just say knight a3, a6, e5, knight d7. I was analyzing some position like this when black goes knight a5, bishop c6. And I remember some idea like this. So knight b3, rook e1, bishop c6. Black is trying to get counterplay on the queen side. And somewhere around here, no, I think it was this. I think this position is something I had. And somewhere around here, I saw the move g5 and king h1. This was at some point my analysis. But I have no idea if it's still here, but the idea was just so funny. So white is just going rook g1 next and then preparing for black to take on f4 when g takes f4 is possible. All of this was something I checked some time ago, and the computer needed a long time to understand any of that. At first it's showing like -1, but later on it's going down to zeros. So yeah, there are quite a few exciting lines here. You can definitely check them out yourself, but let's get back to the game. So she started by going b6 and bishop a6, and here she went queen d7. Again, bishop b7 was something I was thinking about when I thought that it's quite likely that we will transpose to some of my analysis, at least quite similar with e5 to come. But queen d7, now again bishop f4, I thought this is logical, rook c8 and c3. Again, I was thinking about going e5 also here, just to go immediately e5, and then knight d8. And here in general, black has the idea to take, at least that's what I thought, and go knight d4. For example, if I go for this typical idea h4, I thought she could take and go knight d4, when after takes, I think my attack is somewhat limited because I only have the two bishops, which, yeah, the bishop on g2 is not really helping with the attack. And in the meanwhile, black will generate quite a lot of counterplay on the queen side, so I thought this wouldn't be enough, something like that. And yeah, after e5, knight e8, I thought it's also possible to go for something like c3 here, but then knight c7, I wasn't quite sure what is happening here. Maybe I could just go back, that would be an option, but then again knight a5, and probably black does have some counterplay here. And I was also thinking about this structure with c4 here, that was also quite interesting. But here I didn't like bishop b7, then bishop f4, a6, knight c3, and knight d4. I was calculating this. And after takes, I thought that black does have some counter chances. I'm not sure even where I'm going with this. Perhaps to b1, to go to d2 later on. And then something like this, if bishop b7, queen b7 takes. Maybe this is good for me. I just wasn't entirely sure about all of this. Now that I look at the position, it looks quite nice for me. But yeah, I wasn't sure about this structure with c4, so I didn't want to go for that. I went bishop f4 instead. She went rook c8. Bishop f4, it looks a little bit like knight c7 is threatened, but I wasn't even sure about that. Let's just say black goes something like h6. I'm not sure knight c7 is a threat because she can take on e4. And yeah, I thought this probably works out for white, because if it takes on a8, take on f3, queen f3, and now something like, I thought knight d4 here, and I thought that the knight on a8 could get trapped at some point. But again, it could work for white as well. But anyway, I was just waiting for a move, then she played rook c8 anyway, so I didn't have to calculate any knight c7s. Here I went c3. A computer apparently points out that e5 might have been better. And after knight e8, again, I was also thinking about this. Perhaps it's best to go for c4 here. And again, I was thinking about ideas like this, bishop e7 and then a6 and knight d4. Wasn't entirely sure about it. Perhaps it's also one idea for white, again, to go for a structure like c3, because I do think that bishop takes b5, a takes b5, knight d4 is a threat which white needs to do something about. But maybe c3 would be possible. Again, knight c7 was what I was thinking about, and I wasn't entirely sure what is happening. Maybe again this idea with knight a3, because I'm not sure that I want to exchange this. Could be an idea as well, just to take here and then go for something like h4. Yeah, I was seeing something like this, quite similar, and I thought knight could come to b3, and black does have some counterplay, but maybe that's what the computer prefers. Anyway, I went c3, which I think is, at least from a practical point of view, also quite a good move, and she immediately went wrong with c4. Computer points out bishop e7 is better, and then to go a6. That's something what I was saying. I think this again could transpose to some of the lines I was somewhat familiar with, or at least it would be very similar. Knight has to go to e8, which I think I haven't checked. I only saw positions with knight d7, but still it could be quite similar. But she went c4, and now d takes e4, knight takes e4, and rook d1. I just thought that this is very good. Again, in this game, something I didn't mention yet was I was very unhappy with my time management again. This is really something I need to work on. She was spending so much time in the opening that I thought I can also allow myself to spend more time, but then it was just way too excessive, and I spent too much time. So already bishop f4 is not a move you need to think that much about. I was calculating for quite some time the move bishop takes b5. This was the line I was looking at. I didn't even mention that, and now I thought that c4 was strong. But maybe also other things are good for me. I thought c4 is quite good here, and if takes, queen d5, if e takes d5, knight takes d5, and now I thought that even a move like bishop d2 is winning, followed by c4. So I did quite some unnecessary calculation here, I think. Anyway, c3, c4, yeah, I was quite happy to see that, rook d1, because now all of her pieces are just pretty clumsy, and the pawn on d5 is also quite weak. f5 was played. I was expecting rook d8, but then I would have probably done the same, perhaps. Also some bishop h3 ideas I saw, so I wasn't entirely sure yet what I would do here. Maybe also knight e5 can be quite annoying. Again, I wasn't quite sure here yet what I would do. But she went f5, and here I spent way too much time again. 20 minutes for the move c takes d5, which in fact is a good move. But I was calculating this c4 knight b4, and I just couldn't see the straightforward win. So I was kind of contemplating whether I should go for this when it does get quite complicated, or if I should go something like knight e5. This was the move I was thinking about. And here I thought that I should be definitely better, but I didn't see like a clear-cut way either, because the knight on e4 is just very strong. And I also don't really want to go f3, because then the knight moves and then the bishop on g2 is not doing anything at all. So here I was kind of stuck. But in the end I decided for the correct move, cd5, e5, c4, and it just looked very, very good for me. But after the move knight b4 here, I didn't see the correct follow-up. So knight e5 was still correct. If c takes d5, I thought that rook c2 gives her quite a lot of counterplay. So I went knight e5, queen h3, and here I had, I think, only one winning move. This is the only kind of moment I checked with the computer, is that the move bishop h3 here is winning, which I did see those ideas, but here it somehow completely slipped my mind. And it's just crazy to me that in such a position with so much tension, you can just make a move like this and threaten just to take on d5 and then on e4 next. So the idea is very beautiful, and there's just nothing black can do of the threat of cd5 and then queen takes e4. So let's say bishop d6, this is the computer line here, cd5, and now knight takes d5 doesn't work because of queen takes e4, and I'm winning the whole board basically here. So the computer says queen e7 is the best move here, and after knight c6 then some pieces trade, but I guess in the end I'll be something up. Yeah, also pawn on f5 will be hanging, so this is kind of the least I see now. Probably there's even something better. Takes, and bishop f5 should be very good for me. Probably there was something better on the way as well. So again, this idea is quite nice, bishop h3, which I just didn't see. I went knight d4 instead, queen f6, and now knight d7. This is, again, where it went wrong. apparently there's a move better than knight d7, but yeah, already here I wasn't feeling so happy here because I just kind of lost the thread, and I also realized that knight a7 here I was also thinking. By the way, c takes d5 will be, maybe this is the best and I just get a better version compared to the game. In the game I just lost the full tempo. So maybe taking here and after knight d5, which I assume is her move. Maybe I can take now on e4, then it will be quite similar to the game as well, but I don't think I really want to take here. Yeah, maybe knight d3 would be an option to be able to take back with the knight. So again, this was already quite unclear, and I wasn't quite sure. So I went knight d4. Again, bishop h3 is the winning move here. Knight d4, queen f6, knight d7, and I just missed that she has queen f7, and now that I cannot take here so well because she has bishop c4. And then I will move the queen, let's say to e1. She takes here, and then in the end she even ends up being a pawn up, and I thought I can be even much worse here. I didn't see any compensation for the pawn. So I went knight b5 back against the threat of bishop c4 and rook d8, and now again we have the same position as we could have reached earlier, just that black has the extra move rook d8. So I was just yeah, not very fortunate with my calculation here, or just not good enough in that moment to find bishop h3. So queen e6, and now I took on d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes e4, take on e4, queen takes e4, and honestly now I can see that this is 0.0. I thought in the game that I'm already under some pressure here because I am a pawn up, but this bishop on b7 can be potentially very, very strong, and my king is quite weak. In general, she could have also taken here, I think, and then go for something like this, but here I thought that my pawn on f4 is actually helping with the defense because it's stabilizing the knight on e5, and if I have the knight on e5, many key squares are protected, for example the square on g4. And I thought that here I'm at least somewhat okay. I always have, well, for now the bishop is not coming back to b7, and it's not so easy for her to even get that. And I often have tricks with knight c6, many knight jumps here, so I thought this should be kind of a right for me. But she made a good practical decision not to take yet, and went back bishop b7, now rook e1, which is a good move, bishop b4. Here, as you can see, we're both extremely low on time, so I'm quite happy that I didn't blunder anything here. Bishop b4, I went for bishop d2, which I think is a good defensive move. And already here I had to be careful about all these knight jumps, but for the moment I thought it's not working. Like knight c3, I thought queen b7, knight d1, bishop b4, and I didn't see how black can continue. So bishop c5 was what she played, good move, b4, and now was the critical, like the decisive moment of the game. Here she could have played bishop takes f2, which I didn't see the follow-up in the game, and apparently neither did she. I think it's also quite hard to see that after king f2, knight c3 is the move, queen b7, knight d1, rook d1, and now queen takes e5. And it turns out that actually white has to be a little bit careful not to lose here, because the king is quite unsafe, and I have to go for bishop c3 here. That's the only move, and after rook f8 check, I think it was king g2, queen e2 check, and king h3, and yeah, the mate is on g7. This threat, so queen e1 doesn't work because of queen g7, and that's why I think black has to give perpetual check here. So already I had to be careful and find this move bishop c3. Also black, I think, can just take here, and it's also a draw, so black is already not risking that much here. But instead she went for queen h3, of course being very low on time, and after b takes c5 here I'm just lucky that there are no jumps which lead to checkmate. I'm not sure what she missed here. Maybe after what she played in the game, knight e3, queen b7, she thought that queen g2 might be checkmate. But yeah, my queen is still protecting the square on g2, and after knight d1, rook d1, I'm simply 3 pieces up and a pawn for a rook, which is just decisive material. So queen h5, rook e1, rook c5, bishop c3. She cannot take on d2 here because the rook on c8 is hanging. So rook c5, bishop c3, and queen f5, knight c6, threatening mate on g7 and knight e7 at the same time. Queen d7, knight d8, and here she resigned. So yeah, I'm happy that I won the game, and I'm also quite happy that I didn't blunder anywhere, because I thought that at some moment it could even be quite bad for me, because simply, again, the critical moment of the game was this moment where I could could have gone bishop h3 earlier. That was the very nice idea for me. So again, here bishop h3 would probably end the game on the spot, but I just didn't see that move. So I hope everyone enjoyed today's recap. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Again, if you have any feedback on how I could make things better, the layout perhaps, or the coverage, please let me know. And yeah, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.